The phone buzzed again, the vibration sending a jolt through my already tense body. 23 missed calls. His name flashed across the screen as another contraction ripped through me, more intense than the last. The snow outside fell relentlessly, thick flakes swirling in the wind and covering the hospital parking lot in an eerie, white silence. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 11:47 p.m. Earlier that day, as he tossed his bags into his parents' waiting car, his laughter echoed in my ears. "You can just go by yourself if it happens. It's not like you need me there." His words stung, each syllable carving a deeper wound. I hadn't expected him to leave me alone in the snowstorm, not with our daughter so close to being born, but here I was, alone in the car, struggling through the painful contractions. The phone buzzed again. I hesitated, then picked it up, watching as his frantic texts piled up. "Where are you? Please answer me. The roads are closed, I'm trying to get back. Please be okay." My thumb hovered over the screen, the temptation to forgive creeping in, but I knew better now. The years of compromise, the unspoken resentments, the way he had always chosen his parents over me, it had all led to this moment. I turned the phone off, slipping it into my pocket. One hand rested on my swollen belly, feeling the rhythmic movements of our daughter, and the other gripped my hastily packed overnight bag. I opened the car door and stepped out into the snow alone. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. 3 months earlier, everything had seemed different. We were full of hope, excited for the future, especially after the devastation of the miscarriage we had suffered. The tears we had shed, the long months of waiting, and the endless, painful cycles of disappointment had all led to this moment of promise. We were going to be parents together. I remember sitting in Dr. Patel's office, holding Matthew's hand as the ultrasound flickered to life on the screen. The grainy image of our baby, our little girl, filled the small room. Dr. Patel smiled warmly. "Congratulations, you're having a girl," she said. I looked at Matthew, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. His grip tightened around my hand, and I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. This was everything we had dreamed of, our miracle after so much heartbreak. "A girl," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Emma, we're having a daughter." I pressed my free hand against my still small belly, feeling the life growing inside of me, our miracle, our second chance. It hadn't been easy, nothing ever is, but this moment felt like the start of something beautiful. We hadn't told anyone yet, not his parents, not my best friend Liv, not even my sister Jenna. The pain of our previous loss had taught us to be cautious. But now, with the second trimester safely underway and our baby's heartbeat confirmed as healthy, we finally had something to celebrate. "I think it's time to tell people," I said as we walked to the car, the warm June sun shining down on us. I was ready to share this joy with the people we loved. Matthew nodded, pulling me close as we walked. "Mom's been asking for months why we never visit. I guess we can finally tell her why we've been so busy." His parents lived 3 hours north in Lakeside, a small resort town where Matthew had grown up helping at their bed and breakfast. Eleanor and Richard Kane were kind people, but a little old-fashioned. They had never understood why I chose to keep working after we married, or why we had waited so long to start a family. "She'll be thrilled," I said. "They both will." Matthew smiled, that crooked half-smile I loved so much. "They might never let us leave once they know they're finally getting a grandchild." I laughed, not realizing then how prophetic those words would become. The weekend with Matthew's parents went exactly as expected. Eleanor cried, Richard cracked open an expensive bottle of scotch he'd been saving for a special occasion, and both of them immediately began planning the nursery they insisted on creating in their home. "For when you visit," Eleanor explained, her eyes gleaming with excitement as she imagined the new addition to their home. It should have been a sign, the way they spoke about our child as if she partly belonged to them, as if we didn't get a say in how she would be raised. But I didn't see it then. I was too caught up in the joy of finally sharing our news. We had dreamed of this moment for so long, and now it felt real. I thought it was only natural for them to be excited. They were, after all, grandparents-to-be, and this was a big moment for them too. "What if we stay with them for Christmas?" Matthew suggested later that night as we packed up to head home. "Mom's been insisting you shouldn't be traveling in your condition." I had my reservations. They were already so involved in every little detail, offering to help choose baby names, giving us unsolicited advice on everything from car seats to where we should deliver. But I kept quiet, hoping this was just the excitement of new grandparents. "I think we'll be fine," I said, brushing off the thought. He smiled, pulling me close. "Mom's right, you shouldn't be stressing about the holidays. Just let them help." It was the first time I noticed a pattern. He had always been close to his parents, but now it felt like he was deferring to them more and more. The small gestures, the nods, the quick agreement when they suggested we spend the holidays with them, everything seemed innocent at first. But something about it bothered me, something I couldn't quite put into words. The closer we got, the further he drifted. As the weeks went by and my pregnancy progressed, Matthew's attention shifted. I noticed it more and more. The way he would call his parents every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and how he would step out of rooms to speak with them in hushed tones. It was as if everything I said or did had to be filtered through his parents' lens. He started agreeing with everything they said, from parenting advice to where we should live. The tipping point came one evening, when I mentioned to Matthew that I was planning to work longer hours to finish a major project at the firm. He looked at me with that concerned expression he always used when his mother was involved. "Maybe you should cut back your hours," he suggested. "Johnson will understand." I shook my head. "I have deadlines. I need to finish the Riverside project before I can go on leave. After that, I'll cut back." "You're pushing yourself too hard, Emma," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "Mom thinks you're overworking. Maybe you should listen to her." The words hit me like a slap. I tried to stay calm. "I'm fine," I said, my voice even. "I'm managing my pregnancy. I don't need your mom's opinion on everything." Matthew didn't respond. Instead, he stood there, eyes averted, almost embarrassed by the tension between us. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he quickly reached for it, his gaze shifting toward it as though he couldn't bear to look at me any longer. "I'm just trying to help you," he muttered, walking away to answer the call. I watched him, a sinking feeling settling deep in my chest. It wasn't the first time his parents had intruded, but it was the first time I felt like I was losing him, losing the man I had married to the overwhelming presence of his mother. It was a slow unraveling, the kind that sneaks up on you, little by little, until one day you realize you're standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into the abyss of your own relationship. I had started to notice the cracks, the small moments when Matthew's behavior no longer seemed like the man I married. His priorities had shifted, and as much as I tried to ignore it, it became clear that his family had become the center of his world. And I was becoming a distant second, a mere afterthought in the life we were supposed to be building together. Matthew had always been close to his parents, but it had never felt like this. It was as if he was living his life not for us, but for the approval of his mother and father. They didn't just offer advice, they demanded it, and he, ever eager to please, followed their every word. Christmas was approaching, and with it, a whole new set of demands. His parents were insistent that we come to Lakeside earlier than planned, despite it being nearly 3 weeks before my due date. The thought of being away from my doctor, from the hospital where I had carefully arranged everything for the birth, made me uneasy. But Matthew, as usual, shrugged it off. "Better safe than sorry," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a decision already made. "We've arranged for you to see Dr. Wan," Alina told me, a dismissive wave in her voice. "He's excellent. We've already spoken to him about taking you on as a patient." My chest tightened. I hadn't agreed to this. The thought of changing doctors, of being treated like a passenger in my own pregnancy, sent waves of panic through me. But as usual, Matthew stood by his mother's side, nodding along to every word, offering no support for my own concerns. "I don't want to switch doctors, Matthew," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't meet my eyes. "It's not a big deal, Emma. Mom's right. What if the weather turns bad?" I felt a pit form in my stomach. This wasn't just about the weather, it was about control. His parents were taking over our lives, and he was allowing it to happen. I wasn't just upset, I was angry. But instead of confronting him directly, I bit my tongue. I had already fought this battle too many times before, and I didn't have the energy to keep fighting him too. But the cracks were becoming bigger, the distance between us more palpable. Every conversation seemed to revolve around his parents, what they wanted, what they thought was best for us, for our baby. I had started to feel like a stranger in my own marriage, like an outsider looking in. The final straw came when Matthew, without consulting me, made the decision to leave for Lakeside the night before Christmas. The roads had already been covered in snow, and I had clearly stated I wasn't ready to leave. "You're being unreasonable," he said, frustration lacing his tone. "You're due in 3 weeks and you don't want to leave in case the roads get worse. You're overthinking this." I tried to remain calm, but my chest tightened. "I don't want to go, Matthew. Not like this. I want to stay here with my doctor. You know the risks." "You'll be fine," he said dismissively, turning to pack his things. "I'll be back before New Year's. I'm just trying to do what's best for you." "By leaving me alone?" I snapped, unable to control the anger building inside of me. "You think leaving me alone in the snowstorm, 9 months pregnant, is what's best for me? Really?" He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than his words ever could. That night, Matthew left, heading to his parents' house, leaving me behind. I sat alone in our living room, a whirlwind of emotions consuming me: betrayal, confusion, anger. I had never felt more alone in my life. And as I watched him drive away, a cold wave of realization washed over me. This wasn't just about a Christmas holiday. This was about everything we had built, or thought we had built, together. He didn't see it. He didn't understand how much it hurt to be left behind, to be told that I was the last priority in his life. He wasn't just abandoning me, he was abandoning our child. And the worst part, he didn't even seem to care. The days following Matthew's departure blurred together in a haze of disappointment and quiet, suffocating solitude. I spent Christmas alone, not by choice, but by abandonment. As I sat in the quiet house, the silence seemed to grow louder with every passing hour. I looked at the Christmas tree we had decorated together just weeks before, the baubles sparkling, the star atop it shining brightly, but nothing felt festive. Everything was wrong. The tree had become a cruel reminder of what I was missing: the husband who should have been here, the man who had made promises he had broken without a second thought. The snow continued to fall, its gentle silence the only sound that kept me company. I had no choice but to keep going through the motions. The nursery stood ready, its soft pastel colors and tiny clothes now only a painful reminder of what should have been a joyful time, of a family coming together to welcome our child. Instead, it felt like the emptiness of a future I couldn't fully imagine anymore. I called Liv, but she wasn't available. She had been there for me through every hardship, every loss. She had been the one who stayed when Matthew pulled away, the one who offered me a safe space when it felt like my world was crumbling. But even she couldn't be here now. Her own life had moved on, and here I was, still trying to figure out what the hell had happened to mine. Liv had called me earlier in the week, offering to visit and check on me. I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine. I couldn't even bring myself to reach out. The thought of facing Matthew's family again, of having to explain why I was alone when I should have been with him, felt impossible. So I shut down. The idea of being the only one at home, left to fend for myself in a time when I should have been surrounded by love and support, was too much to bear. I finally broke down and texted Matthew, half out of frustration, half out of a need for closure that I wasn't sure I could ever find. His response was quick, desperate even. "I'm coming home, Emma. Please, I need to talk to you." The words echoed in my head, twisting into something else entirely. He needed to talk to me. The same man who had left me alone in a snowstorm, the man who hadn't bothered to understand how terrified I was to be pregnant and abandoned, he needed to talk to me now. I stared at the phone in my hand, the glowing screen mocking me. What did he think this would accomplish? What was there left to say? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how utterly powerless I had felt for months. And now, here he was, trying to come back into my life, trying to fix things, but there were no quick fixes here. He had left me at my most vulnerable when I needed him most. And now, he wanted to show up as if nothing had happened, as if I would just accept him back without question. I set my phone down, my thumb hovering over the screen, but I couldn't make myself respond. Instead, I went back to the nursery, standing in the doorway for what felt like hours, staring at the crib that was meant to hold our child, the one thing I had been able to control. It had become a monument to the broken trust between us, a reminder that no matter how much I had hoped, no matter how hard I had tried to make this work, the reality was that Matthew wasn't the person I thought he was, and I wasn't sure if he would ever be able to change. The next morning, I woke to a sense of deep emptiness that seemed to settle in my bones, as if the weight of the past few weeks had physically drained me. I hadn't slept well. The anxiety and hurt gnawed at me, and the quiet house only amplified the loneliness. The snowfall had stopped, but the world outside remained still, covered in a thick blanket of white. I sat on the couch, watching the snow fall from the window. My phone lay beside me, its silence as oppressive as the quiet in the house. The text messages from Matthew sat unread, a growing pile of frantic words and apologies. "I'm sorry, Emma, I never should have left. Please talk to me. I'm on my way back, don't do this, please." I had heard it all before, his apologies, his promises. Words, always words. But his actions, they had told a different story. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the texts, reading them over and over again. But with every word, something inside of me hardened. I was tired of hearing how sorry he was. I was tired of waiting for him to step up, only for him to disappoint me over and over again. His actions had shown me who he really was, and it wasn't the man I had married. The thought hit me like a cold wave. I didn't need him to apologize anymore. I didn't need him to come back and try to make things right. What I needed was to take control of my own life. I needed to stop waiting for him to choose me, to choose us, because I had already chosen, and it wasn't him. I stood up from the couch, my legs shaky but determined. The nursery was quiet. Lily was asleep in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling with the peaceful rhythm of sleep. I walked into the room, my hand resting on her soft, warm body, and I smiled, a small, tender smile. She was everything now. She was the reason I had to move forward, the reason I had to be strong. For months, I had tried to make it work with Matthew, to be the perfect wife, to do everything he asked. But in the end, it wasn't enough. It would never be enough for him, and the thought of living the rest of my life in the shadow of his indecisiveness, in the fog of his parents' control, was suffocating. I pulled the phone back into my hand. This time, instead of responding to his endless stream of messages, I composed one of my own. "Lily and I are fine. I've made my decision." I hesitated for just a second, then pressed send. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment longer, and then I turned the phone off, slipping it back into the drawer where it wouldn't control me anymore. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my chest. The next few days passed in a blur of small but meaningful steps toward a future I wasn't sure I was ready for, but one I knew I couldn't avoid. With every decision, every action, I felt the weight of the past slipping away, slowly but steadily. Matthew tried reaching me multiple times, his voice urgent in the texts, his tone pleading. "Emma, please, we need to talk. I'm sorry, I should have never left, let me make it right." But I couldn't bring myself to respond. He was still trying to control the narrative, still thinking he could show up and make everything better with a few well-placed words. But I had seen through that facade. I kept my focus on Lily. She was the only thing that mattered now. Every day, she grew stronger, more alert, her little hands grasping for the world around her. Watching her, I knew that my choices were no longer just about me, they were about her too. I couldn't let her grow up in the shadow of a broken marriage, in a house filled with deceit and unspoken anger. Liv stayed with me, offering her support, her unwavering presence grounding me in the midst of this storm. Every time I felt myself slipping, questioning my decisions, she was there to remind me that I had made the right choice. "You're doing what's best for both of you, Emma," she would say, rubbing my back as I fed Lily in the quiet hours of the night. And then, there was the moment when I realized I didn't need to keep looking back. I didn't need Matthew to validate my decision. I had made it on my own, and that was enough. 2 weeks after Lily was born, Matthew came by, as promised. He arrived on time with a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite. For the first time in a long while, he didn't seem to have an agenda. His eyes were tired, his face lined with the weight of his own mistakes. But he was genuine in a way I hadn't seen before. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, standing in the doorway of the nursery as I rocked Lily to sleep. "About everything. About the choices I made and how much I failed you." His voice wavered, full of raw emotion. "I want to make things right, Emma. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove to you that I can be the man you need." I didn't say anything right away. I didn't have to. The room was filled with the unspoken truths, the broken promises, and the quiet, desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he was finally realizing what he had almost lost. "I've been working on myself," he continued. "I've started therapy. I'm learning how to set boundaries. I'm learning how to be the man I should have been all along for you and for Lily." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw someone who was genuinely trying. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself, to explain myself, to carry the burden of his mistakes on my shoulders. Matthew, I said quietly, looking down at Lily in my arms, I appreciate that, I really do. But we're not going back to what we were. I don't want that. I need to move forward for me and for Lily. We need to build something new. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I know it can't be the same. He nodded, a sad, understanding look in his eyes. I understand, he said, his voice steady, and I'll be here for both of you, whatever that looks like whenever you're ready. The conversation ended on that quiet, hopeful note, and as I watched him leave that day, I knew that while things would never be the same, they didn't have to be broken forever. We would figure it out, one step at a time, rebuilding not just our family, but ourselves. That night, after Lily had settled into her crib, I sat in the living room, staring at the photo of us that had once been so full of promise. Now it felt like a relic of another lifetime. But as I sat there, a soft smile tugged at my lips. It was a smile born of strength, of knowing that no matter what happened next, I was enough. Lily and I were enough. Tomorrow was a new day, and I was ready to embrace it fully.